Welcome to News Now with Kevin Dietz. Tonight, a massive shakeup in the auto industry as the Attorney General allows Tesla to sell cars in Michigan. Will it lead to you buying your next car online? And school security grants are being announced, but there isn't enough money to go around to all our local schools. An expert tells you what you need to do right now. But we begin with a special guest, Wayne County Sheriff Benny Napoleon. Benny, good to see you, man.
Always, Kevin. Such a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thanks for coming. I really do appreciate it. So, you love being the chief of police in Detroit, right?
I did, but it was the toughest job I ever had.
That's when we met, right?
Yes,
you had
sir.
a lot going on.
A whole lot.
I remember Nancy Kerrigan getting hit
Started
in the knee,
right after the Archer administration. Few days right after inauguration. National headlines, international headlines.
You were everywhere. You were like, your face was all over the world in the Tanya Hardy, Nancy Kerrigan investigation. You've been sheriff for a while now?
It'll be 11 years in July.
All right, congratulations. Wow. How do you like that?
It's a good job. I mean, it gives me an opportunity to continue doing what I've been doing now, believe it or not, for 45 years in April. Wow. It's been a long time.
So your name comes up every time an election comes up for something else. I saw this week Rashida Tlaib announced that she's running for re-election. You ever get any ideas of maybe going to Washington?
I will give you the scoop.
You'll give me the scoop when you decide?
I am. I know. I can give you the scoop.
What
right
is
now.
the scoop right now?
I am absolutely not running for Congress.
Oh, that was not the scoop I was hoping for. I was hoping for a different scoop.
No, well, that's the one you get today.
That's all right. Do you think anyone can beat her?
Oh yeah, she can be beat. I mean, anybody can be beat. It's just a combination of, having the right candidate, the right amount of money, and the right kind of team in your place. But it's going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult. People love Rashida in her district. Nobody works any harder than she works. So it's going to be a monumental task if anybody wants to go up against her. It's not going to be easy.
And being a national name like that, she's going to be able to get money.
Yeah, she's going to have everything she needs to succeed. It's just a question if somebody has more.
All right, let me get into your specialty. I want to talk about crime. And you grew up here. You still live here. You've been Detroit Police, Wayne County Sheriff. Do you think the bigger problem these days is gang violence, or do you think mental illness is a bigger problem? Because we're getting a lot of shootings, and it seems like it's always one or the other.
Well, the gang violence is a byproduct of the narcotics trafficking. And so a lot of that is interrelated with gangs and drugs, and that drives the crime rate in most urban communities. So it's a big problem as it relates to a lot of the shootings that occur in the city. Mental illness is a major cross-the-board issue for criminal justice. Almost 70% of the people who are in the Wayne County Jail are mental health consumers at different points. Some more severe than others, but we have about 70%, we believe, are mental health consumers.
As you guys build the new jail, are you taking that into consideration?
Always.
Are you guys doing things different?
Oh, we started doing things different when I was appointed sheriff. I practiced law in probate court, and I represented people who required treatment. And one of the things that I understood and to this day recognize is that the jail is not an appropriate place to treat someone with mental illness. So working with County Executive Evans, who has been extremely supportive, we're doing everything we can to get people out of the jail environment and put them in the proper treatment facility instead of being incarcerated. So we've been able to reduce our jail population quite a lot. I mean, I was averaging over 2,200 prisoners a day, and I'm down now to somewhere around 1,500 because we move everybody out that we can safely and efficiently and effectively into a treatment facility as opposed to the jail.
At the end of the day, we're paying for it either way, taxpayers,
but it's
right?
A lot
Is it cheaper, right? The most expensive way possibly is probably in jail,
incarceration, right? No question. To incarcerate a person in Wayne County Jail costs about $35,000 a year. Numbers fluctuate. But to put the person in an appropriate mental health facility is about $10,000 to $12,000 a year. So it absolutely makes more sense to give people treatment as opposed to incarceration.
So everyone says, Engler closed all the hospitals. That's what happened, and whatever. That's true.
True.
But is it swinging back? Are we going to open other kinds of facilities? Because you know what I find is families can't take care of their own when mental illness gets too too bad.
No question, and unfortunately, they're among the most forgotten population that we have in this country. If a person has severe mental illness and they're going to require treatment for a lifetime, the families tend to kind of forget about them, unfortunately, very often. One of the things that I've had the opportunity to talk to the lieutenant governor is he was going around talking about criminal justice reform in the state of Michigan. So I've sat with him a couple of times, and I really stressed to him that, you know, if you're going to really talk about criminal justice reform, you have to have a significant attention paid to mental illness and the people who are mental health consumers that are incarcerated.
You'd mentioned gangs and drugs. Does the passing of recreational marijuana have any impact, or when you talk about drugs and gangs, is that more cocaine and heroin and heavier drugs?
Well, I was interested to hear Chief Craig say that that there's an expansion of illegal marijuana that is driving a lot of the problems that are occurring in the city. I think if we're going to do it and have legal marijuana, I think if we hurry up, get the system in place, and allow people to purchase marijuana legally and safely, that I think you will see a reduction in the amount of trafficking that you have illegally. And so that needs to be a real emphasis for us. The citizens have decided they want it. Whether we agree or disagree, that's not the issue. If we're going to do it, let's do it right, regulate it properly, and make sure that it's available to consumers in a safe environment.
So everyone talks about the revenue it brings in, but it could curb violence, perhaps.
I believe it will. We don't know, but if I had to speculate, I would think that it would result in less violence, because I just believe that the illegal trade will disappear once you have legal marijuana that is readily available, it's safe, and people know that it's clean and they're not getting something that is tainted. Obviously, the price is going to be driven down. It's just like liquor. You know, if liquor were illegal, there would be a big market for it and it would cost a lot more. But because it's so readily available, there's no real market for illegal liquor anymore. And I think the same would happen with marijuana.
Yeah, it was Law Enforcement Appreciation Day the other day, and I just wanted to say thank you for your service. I appreciate everything you do. And, if you come back, I would like to talk to you about, the problem with suicide in law enforcement officials and just how the public looks at law enforcement officials. And we've had these shootings and so many things, that we still need to talk about. But
I would love to spend some time with you and have that conversation, because there's so many things that are happening out here that impact us as a community, especially when you're talking about police shootings and interactions between law enforcement. And we have to do a better job on our side. And we have always, in this area, received great support from the citizens. As you saw riots that occurred around the country as related to police misconduct and shootings, you've never seen that happen here in the city of Detroit. And I think that's because people have confidence in the police department in Detroit. They have confidence in its leadership. A tremendous percentage of the people who are in that department came up like I did, who are products of the community, products of the school system. They lived in the community, they went to church in the community. So people know their police department, and I think that's a great benefit.
All right, thanks for being here. We will be right back. Welcome back to News Now with Kevin Dietz. Mass shootings are a national crisis, and too often they happen at schools where our children are dependent on the staff and administration to keep them safe. The state of Michigan is about to announce grants for the Safe School Initiative, but there's not enough money to go around. Last year, they gave out about $10 million for 1,600 schools, which is just about $6,000 per school. Joining us now is expert Pete Rashidi to talk about this. There is not enough money to go around to keep all of our schools safe, is there?
No, there isn't. They have to spend the dollars rather carefully.
And not every school is going to get money, right?
Not everybody is going to get money. It's a competitive school grant, which means each school has to apply, and based on the merits of the application, a few will be selected and many will not.
So about how many schools got selected last year?
150 or so.
150 schools for the whole state for this. Mm-hmm. And the idea of that money is what?
Well, specifically earmarked for enumerated items that the state police have decided were needed and necessary. And in a lot of cases, they are.
And so one of the big issues is mass shootings in school, unfortunately. And schools are trying to figure out what to do. The key is that schools get an assessment to find out where they're weak, right?
Well, they should. Many don't. Never lose your sense of outrage. We even have to have this conversation, but at the end of the day, we must. And what we need to do is look at safety and security in our schools just a little bit different. If we continue to just add video cameras and door locks and access controls, is that enough? Let me ask you a question, Kevin. Is there a school that's been attacked that didn't have some of those traditional security metrics?
I feel like you could get into any school if you were determined enough, probably get in.
You don't even have to be determined. A lot of cases you can walk around the building and find a door that's propped open. So the first thing we recommend to schools is reinforce and enforce their policy of keeping all doors closed and locked at all times.
Okay, and so what are some of the things that are really important? Because you say more cameras aren't necessarily going to work. What will work?
Well, the first thing you have to do is make sure that all the entrances are difficult to get in. By that I mean most are just glass. They're doors, glass side lights, large windows, and a rock, which is in the landscaping, can be picked up and thrown through the glass, and the bad guy can bypass the locked door, if you will. So if you have a security assessment of the building, those are the kinds of things that will be pointed out. If you can add...
Is there a way to make the window so you can't throw a rock through it?
Yes, a simple layer of security film properly installed will delay a determined attacker from getting in.
Maybe make it hard enough that they decide to leave.
A little bit discouraged, yes, and they'll go and they'll try somewhere else.
Would you put those on the windows of the classrooms too, to keep people from getting into a classroom? And do you need more than that? Do the doors need to lock from inside?
Well, unfortunately, yes, they do need to lock from the inside, and many older schools, in order to lock the classroom door, you have to use a key from the outside of the classroom. So you have to close the door, turn the key to lock it. Newer schools, it's not the case. To add an interior lock to a school door can be as much as $2,500 because likely you'd have to replace the door.
I've heard of schools too where they talk about the idea of maybe having a barrier come down and close so at least a gunman would be stuck in one part of the building.
Yeah, some schools, if you had hallways, you might be able to add something like a gate that could restrict some attackers' mobility.
Are these things really expensive, or are they doable? What's the conversation? Because every taxpayer is going to be like, look, more taxes. What's the likelihood that this is really going to happen?
Sure. So we recommend reviewing the policy that the schools have first, maybe some minor alterations to the policy. That's free. Adding security film to the vulnerable doors and windows. It's a lot less expensive than replacing the door. A new door can be on the order of $2,500. Adding security window film can be $300-ish per door. It's a little bit more cost effective. The other thing is many people want to add, or many schools want to add metal detectors. They want to add security guards. They want to add things that aren't as effective as A, deterring an attacker, and B, should an attacker get in, restricting his movement through the building. And then thirdly, the one that's overlooked often is treating those who were wounded much, much sooner in the timeline. As the police arrive, they're not interested in anyone wounded. They're walking over the wounded to address the threat. They must stop the threat first. In that first few minutes, so from the first shots till the time the police arrive, till the time they go in and clear the building, that's when most of those who are shot will perish. If the school has trauma kits in the building and staff trained in their use, you can save lives, period.
So you just have to train teachers or maybe even students to use these trauma kits.
Absolutely. I was in Lansing, and I recommended that the Board of Education say to schools, hey, look, listen, 8th grade and 10th grade kids in gym class, have them learn how to use AEDs, how to do CPR, how to use trauma kits. That'll serve that child for the rest of their life. But should an attack occur, not only will you have staff trained, you'll have students trained. And with a little bit of training, I'd invite you to it. You can make a difference.
I feel safer flying because of the Air Marshal program. Could there be an Air Marshal kind of program in schools, a school marshal, or is it too cost prohibitive?
Well, we know that if you put a SWAT team in every school, let's say 8 or 10 armed police officers in a school every day, that would be a strong deterrent, but not affordable. We developed a system that is based on the Air Marshal program and the Federal Flight Deck Officer program that is affordable. that adds that deterrent that we don't currently have in our schools.
Parents, are they allowed to go to their administration and say, what is your safety program? Does the administration have to tell them what they're doing, generally?
Generally, they might keep a few things a secret, but it's really simple. The parents should go to the board meetings and ask what is being done to improve the safety and security of the schools that their children attend. They have a vested interest. Their children are there. If you get the what, we don't know, maybe it's time to look at re-electing some of those board members and making a difference.
All right, thanks for being here. We really
Certainly.
appreciate it. When we return, an auto expert that says the auto industry is in for a shock now that Michigan Attorney General is allowing Elon Musk to sell Teslas online here in Michigan. We'll be right back. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel says any Michigan resident may now lawfully buy a Tesla automobile and have it serviced in Michigan. With that announcement, the whole ballgame may have changed for the Detroit auto industry, and soon you may be buying your cars online. Joining me now is auto expert and founder of DeliverMyRide.com, Mike McInerney. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
So why is this such a game changer?
Well, because first of all, this is Detroit, and you know the car industry had its beginnings here, and very traditional way of selling cars here in Detroit. The car dealers here in Detroit really do influence the way the factory operates. We've got close relationships because we're here in town with them. We see them at the golf course, we see them out to dinner, so we've got relationships with the people in the glass house and at Chrysler and beyond. So having Tesla, an upstart, come here to Detroit and be able to sell cars directly online and bypassing this franchise agreement, sales agreement, is a big deal.
So right now, if I wanted to buy one, I'd go to Somerset Collection, I'd look at their car, and then I'd want to buy it, but I'd have to go to like Ohio or Chicago to buy it. But that's all going to change now.
That's correct.
What's going to happen? Are they going to be shipped to my house? Are they going to be shipped to a dealership?
They'll be shipped to your house here in Michigan. Before you had to go to Ohio or Indiana or Illinois. The sales representatives at Somerset, the outlet they have there, can now talk about prices and walk you through the buying process. They couldn't do that before. And then from a service standpoint, you can get your car serviced here in Michigan. It'll be through a third party operated by Tesla with an agreement. But yeah, you won't have to have your car driven down to Ohio to have it serviced.
So will dealerships in town have to start changing the way they do business? Are they going to have to deliver cars or sell them online?
Well, they're doing that now. I mean, not in wholesale because they've got their locations and they put a lot of money into their dealerships. But the savvy dealer will go out and be concierge minded and take care of the customer in any way they can. But the consumer is going online, and people want to buy their cars online. They want the experience that Amazon gives, and technology is now available to let that happen.
Yeah, so when I buy a car, I don't really love the dealership experience. Some people do. They really like to go in and kick the tires and do a test drive and do all that stuff. I don't feel comfortable about the haggling of it all and that type of thing. Your business is all online?
All right, DeliverMyRide.com is an online marketplace for new cars. We sell dealership inventory online, and the big difference between that and Cars.com or Autotrader.com, those are all kind of lead generation shopping sites. But our philosophy is, when a customer is on our site and they're looking at live inventory, give them all the incentives and let them calculate their own lease payments and do it all right there. Don't make them go somewhere else. It's an option. It's not the only way that car buying will ever happen in the future. Those guys who like to roll up their sleeves and go in and negotiate can still do it. But if you want to have convenience and do it online and avoid all that other stuff, you can do it now online.
So all of the companies are trying to come up with the electric car, but now do they have to speed things up? I mean, what's going on like today, at GM and Ford and Chrysler?
Well, they're all investing heavily in autonomous and electric vehicles, and in anticipation that that's where the consumer is going to be. But sometimes it's like pushing a rope up the hill. If people don't demand, if the consumer doesn't demand an electric vehicle and an autonomous vehicle, they'll sit on large lots around the country like they're doing now until the demand surfaces.
But does that happen with Tesla?
Well, Tesla's kind of a unique thing. I mean, Elon Musk is a charismatic guy, and he's going to the moon and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of cool to own a Tesla. They're not, they were profitable one quarter last year, which is why their valuation doubled since October. That valuation now is double GM's valuation. They're now the second most valuable car company in the world, and they've had one quarter of profitability. So it's gimmicky in a way, but it's a cool car. And Rivian here in Plymouth is coming online with trucks that are electric, and it's going that way. But it remains to be seen how fast people will adopt it.
Do you think they'll actually have showrooms here or dealerships?
Sure, they can, but Tesla's model isn't to flood a lot with new cars. You go online, you order it, they build it, and they ship it. So it's a very efficient way of doing it, but they're not going to sell millions and millions of cars that way.
But this is a huge deal.
It is a huge deal.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Tomorrow on News Now, the president is back in Washington for the first time since the impeachment trial started. And we'll check in with political expert Dennis Darnoy. Plus, calling all local political junkies, presidential candidates from both parties are looking for volunteers to ramp up campaign offices right here in Michigan this weekend. And candidates try to win over absentee ballot voters in the Great Lakes State. For News Now, I'm Kevin Dietz. Thanks for watching, and good night.